Putin will be in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, while Iran's president will be hosting. Following his meeting with the president of Iran the following day, Russian President Vladimir Putin will travel to the UAE and Saudi Arabia on Wednesday for a working visit, according to a Kremlin spokesman. When asked whether Putin would bring up the possibility of coordinated actions on global oil markets during his trip to the Gulf, spokeswoman Dmitry Peskov said that such discussions often took place within the OPEC Plus group, but that the topic was always up for discussion. The oil market was skeptical of OPEC Plus's decision last Thursday to agree to voluntary supply cuts totaling about 2.2 million barrels per day, which is why the visit is taking place. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to visit the UAE and Saudi Arabia, the two countries with the highest oil exports, according to online news outlet Shot, which broke the news on Monday. Putin would visit the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, according to Kremlin foreign policy advisor Yuri Ushakov, who spoke to Shot. In Saudi Arabia, Putin would primarily meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for negotiations. The prince, who is known as MBS, and Putin have become very close. In late 2016, they played a crucial role in finalizing the deal to form OPEC Plus, a group of leading oil producers, to stabilize the energy markets. This was necessary because both countries' budgets relied on these markets. Due to European sanctions on Moscow, traders fled to neutral territory, and Dubai, United Arab Emirates, became an important trading hub for Russian oil companies. This included Russia's number 2 producer, Lukoil, which relocated part of its operation to Dubai. In recent years, Putin's international travel has been minimal, mainly to countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. In October, he made his most recent international trip, which was to China. On Thursday, OPEC and its allies reached an agreement to voluntarily reduce oil production by 2.2 million bpd in the first 3 months of 2024. Saudi Arabia will spearhead the effort by extending its existing voluntary cut. Included in the 2.2 million bpd total was an extension of the 1.3 million bpd in voluntary cuts already in place by Russia and Saudi Arabia. In light of doubts regarding the complete implementation of the voluntary cuts, the oil market responded ambivalently to the new arrangements. Despite a 1% gain for Brent crude futures on Tuesday, oil prices fell 2% last week following the announcement and fell even further on Monday. On the road, with contributions from Vladimir Soldatkin and Dmitry Antonov, during last night's attacks, Ukraine claimed to have shot down 10 out of 17 Russian drones. According to Ukrainian authorities, 10 out of 17 attack drones fired by Russia overnight have been neutralized by their military, according to Reuters. There were no casualties and minimal damage was reported after 3 drones struck an unspecified infrastructure target, according to the governor of Ukraine's western Lviv region. The drones were shot down over various areas of the country, according to Kyiv's Air Force. The civilian targets in the southern Kherson region and eastern Donetsk were struck by 6 S-300 missiles. During a clandestine meeting, Zelensky apprised senators from the United States of the war's advancement. President Joe Biden's urging. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer backed the first procedural vote on an extra $106 billion package to fund humanitarian efforts in Gaza, as well as in Ukraine, Israel, and countries in the Asia-Pacific region, but more and more people are beginning to doubt that this will really occur. Over the weekend, Republicans pushed for provisions on the border security package that Democrats disagreed with, and negotiations broke down. The White House sent a letter to the leaders of the House and Senate in which it expressed concern that the United States would not have enough money to continue providing aid and weaponry to Ukraine by the year's end. The letter went on to say that this would result in the successes it has achieved and the likelihood of Russian military victories if the United States were to cut off the supply of these items. State Secretary Antony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines are among the senior administration officials scheduled to brief all senators today in a classified briefing on the situation in Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky is also expected to update senators on the progress of hostilities. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has reported that Zelensky will personally contact senators to inform them of his voting intentions. On Monday night, Schumer moved to consider the bill, which is meant to include the extra foreign assistance package. Disagreements regarding changes to immigration and asylum policies meant to decrease the influx of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border have delayed the finalization of this package. Putin is scheduled to visit the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia tomorrow, followed by a meeting with the president of Iran and Russia on Thursday, according to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, who is cited by Reuters. Russian President Vladimir Putin is scheduled to visit the UAE and Saudi Arabia tomorrow for a working visit. The following day, he will have talks in Russia with his Iranian counterpart Ebrahim Raisi, regarding the question of whether Putin would address the possibility of coordinated action on global oil markets during his tour of the Persian Gulf. The spokesman clarified that such discussions typically take place within the OPEC+ format, but that the matter has consistently been considered. The worldwide oil markets were skeptical of the decision last Thursday by OPEC+ countries to voluntarily reduce oil supplies by approximately 2.2 million barrels per day, which led to the visit. Putin's upcoming trips to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, the two countries with the highest oil exports, were initially reported yesterday by the Shot news site. Putin will travel to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia to meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, according to the website's citation of Yuri Ushakov, a Kremlin foreign policy advisor. Reuters reports that Putin and the Saudi prince have developed a strong bond. Since both nations rely heavily on oil exports to fund their national budgets, this contributed to the late 2016 agreement that established the OPEC+ group to exert influence over international oil markets. In contrast, Russian oil companies have begun to use Dubai as a commercial hub. This includes Lukoil, the country's second-largest oil company, which relocated some of its operations to Dubai in response to European sanctions against Moscow, which forced Russian companies to seek neutral territory. In recent years, Putin's international travel has been minimal, focusing mostly on the nations that were once part of the Soviet Union. Reuters reports that in October, he made his last trip outside of this group of nations to China, and moreover, in 2023, the European Union's imports of Russian nuclear fuel and related services rose. According to the Euratom Supply Agency, ESA, Russia's nuclear fuel and services for the EU's reactors designed by Russia rose in 2023 compared to 2021. The year before Russia invaded Ukraine, the European Union is trying to lessen its reliance on Russia, even though sanctions do not apply to these imports. Despite rising demand for nuclear power due to high energy prices and the push to reduce carbon emissions, total imports from Russia's nuclear power industry stayed stable last year. In an interview with Reuters, the acting head of the ESA explained that, following a hike in 2022, 5 EU countries operating so-called VVER reactors are expected to surpass their 2021 import levels once again this year. This trend shows how difficult it will be for the European Union to reach its long-term objective of being renewable energy independent. Imports from countries operating Russian-designed VVER reactors increased in 2022 compared to 2021 and are likely to have increased in 2023 compared to the year before the Russian invasion, according to Stefano Ciccarello's remarks that were released for publication on Friday. According to the ESA's annual report from October, the 5 countries in question, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Finland, Hungary, and Slovakia, purchased 22% more enrichment and 30% more conversion services from Russia last year. These power plants are generating more new fuel supplies. He predicted that VVER utilities would receive more Russian material in the near future compared to 2021 due to future purchases. It is too soon to tell if imports in 2023 will also be higher than last year, Ciccarello said without providing specific figures. Among the 5 EU nations that have depended solely on Russian supplies thus far, the ESA reports that only Hungary has not yet inked contracts for alternative fuels. No comment was received on Friday from the Hungarian government. Fortum of Finland and Westinghouse of the United States are collaborating on an alternative fuel, and according to the company, the introduction of the new fuel is a multi-year project requiring regulatory approvals. According to ESA, in 2022, there was little change in EU imports of natural uranium and related services from Russia compared to the previous year. This was due to the fact that different utility strategies reached a plateau. Those who do not rely on Russia are trying to further reduce any such dependence, stated Ciccarello. On the other hand, there are people who are completely dependent on Russian fuel, who are building up fuel stocks as a contingency for supply disruptions before the alternative fuel is licensed. Almost a third of France's energy comes from nuclear power, and this accounts for nearly 10% of the energy consumed in the EU. Besides that, Belgium and Sweden are also important producers. An increase in supplies from Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan more than made up for a 16% drop in Russian uranium imports to the European Union last year. According to the ESA, Russian nuclear energy imports into the European Union in 2022 were valued at approximately €750 million, which is equivalent to 1% of Russia's gas imports into the bloc. As reported by the European Commission, in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the European Union is currently discussing a Commission proposal for a 12th set of economic sanctions. The plan is not yet public, but according to sources, it does not target Russia's nuclear energy sector with sanctions. Regarding Russia's nuclear power, the European Union cannot impose sanctions without the unanimous consent of all 27 member states. Unfortunately, this cannot be achieved because Hungary, which is home to the PAC's nuclear plant expansion contract held by the Russian state monopoly Rosatom, has refused to comply. Russia ranked third among uranium suppliers to the U.S. last year, behind only Europe and Japan, and ahead of all other countries with more reactors than any other. Legislation that would outright ban uranium from Russia has yet to be considered by the U.S. Congress. To counteract potentially dangerous supplies, Ciccarello predicted that the West would have to increase its current conversion and enrichment scope by 20 to 30%. According to him, the upgrades won't be able to satisfy demand in the West when they go live later this decade. This is a massive investment spanning several decades, Ciccarello stated. For further investment, the industry is looking for some form of guaranteed market. Russians in Latvia shouldn't be treated like swine, says Putin to Latvia.